Angela, welcome to AIM10X Digital. It's always, pleasure seeing you. Thanks also for having us here in Turin, in Italy. But let's start off with an introduction. Who's Angela, and also, what is Iveco Group all about?
Thank you very much, Stefan, for this invitation. Very happy to be here. Yes, I'm heading supply chain management at Iveco Group. So we're basically responsible for group procurement, category management, spare parts management, transport logistics, and sales operation planning, and SQE, as well as sustainability and competence management. And Iveco Group is a spin-off of CH Industrial since 2 years, and we produce basic commercial vehicles, including trucks and buses. We are also engine producer. And so I'm very happy that today we have an opportunity to share some of my experiences.
No, that's amazing. And prior to Iveco Group, Angela, what did you do?
I was mainly in manufacturing supply chain environment in companies like Siemens and ABB. I was also chief procurement officer at Lufthansa Group for a couple of years, and I joined Iveco since 15 months now.
What made you excited about joining this wonderful company?
Like everybody else, I does research about the company on the webpage. I clearly can see that this is a group which has, even though 120 years experiences, but are full of startup mindset. I also can see I could see that the company is driving for innovation and continuous improvement. What inspires me is about the company value, which says Iveco Group is the home of unique people and brands. And I have to say today, I'm here since 15 months. I can clearly see this value comes through every day into our operations. Last but not least, to mention, we have great people here, great minds.
No, that's obviously super important. And I love that tagline of a home for unique people and brands. That's awesome.
Yes, diversity is seen as a strength here.
Since you joined 15 months ago, any sort of major changes that you made and that you went through that you could elaborate on?
Yes, quite a few. I will start to say the first one is we realigned supply chain strategy and the mission towards the overall company strategy and overall company objectives. The second is we launched our transformation journey focused on 3 areas: sustainability, resiliency, and efficiency. The third area is, of course, we look at our overall weakness areas along the supply chain, and we identified a few potential areas of improvement, and we have launched a few transformation projects on that.
Excellent. And now if you look ahead, so the next 1 to 3 years, or maybe 3 to 5 years, what are some of those strategic priorities?
I would say there are going to be 3 core areas. The first one is to make sure that starting with the customer's expectation, we want to bring the most competitive products to the market. The second one is, of course, looking at overall risk mitigation. As you all know, that this is a big thing of the current geopolitical risks, as well as some nature disasters, but also some shortages on natural resources. And the third one area is, of course, to make sure that overall ESG aspects, that we, together with our clients, but also our suppliers, we want to work towards a common ESG targets. To support these 3 core areas, we have 2 enabling areas. One is about process efficiency. For instance, we are looking at integrated business planning to make sure that our demand is properly managed through the very beginning from the customers to the end of the suppliers. And the second one is, of course, looking at the competence management, looking at what are the missing skills can be trained, can be built up. And we have launched also specific talent programs.
Now, excellent. Then maybe to double click on that, especially you mentioned the planning transformation, you mentioned the supplier collaboration that you sort of see as an integrated part of it. Completely agree there. Why has that been a priority? Why is that actually a priority for you?
Yes, in the last 15 months, I've experienced also quite firsthand, there are quite a few, let's say, disruptions. I think if you look at in the last couple of years, there's always this shortages on global semiconductors. We had issues on delayed deliveries from suppliers. We had issues with the planning processes with our suppliers. Therefore, it is very important for us to look at where can we do things different and improve working capital to increase customer satisfaction rate. Therefore, we wanted to drive this change to integrate the business planning from the customer front until the demand planning within ourselves, the capability of our manufacturing, as well as our supply chain capabilities with the suppliers to be integrated into the whole processes. It's going to be a new way of doing business, actually. But I think that's the backbone of the whole operation. If we get those things right, there's a high chance we can be successful.
No, I love that. And also what I like, you mentioned the customer centricity. Then you mentioned the importance of getting upstream visibility. So actually across the entire value chain, so to speak, you actually improve your ability to respond to the market. Now, obviously, that requires the entire organization to rally behind this important initiative, because it's not just supply chain, it's not just procurement, it's the commercial organization, it's the finance organization. So it's a really cross-functional initiative, actually, IBP. A lot of chief supply chain officers are, they have a top of mind, like, how do I not stay within my silo, supply chain, but how do I rally the entire organization behind an important initiative like this? Can you share your advice and what you've seen working and also your approach here?
First of all, as I said, supply chain should see us as an enabling function, right? To make sure that our priorities is actually the business priorities. The business success is a starting point, right? Therefore, truly understand what are our pain points. And I think the pain points should not be only supply chain pain points, but rather looking at the overall supply chain. Where are the issues we want to solve? How can we make happier customers? I think that's a starting point as well. But I think, as you say, it's really a cross-functional collaboration. The effort has to be done within different area of the business. I think one of the things I always start to look at, getting engaged from all the cross-functional partners. We identify where the pain points are, and the solution we provide should be a great benefit to ease the current pain points of all our cross-functional partners. It can be reducing efforts, can be looking at better visibility of demand, can be much closer collaboration with our suppliers, with our dealers and end users. So if we are taking care to explain the why, and starting with why now and why us, I think that's to be open-minded for new solutions. I think that's always a good starting point to start a journey together. And I think at Iveco we have this corporate value, which is we collaborate to win. So collaboration among different parties are essential for success.
Maybe a follow-up question on the pain points and the discovery of what are we trying to solve for here? How did you actually do that, and was it difficult to get alignment, or was that actually pretty obvious after the pain points were put on the table?
I think it's about finding a right moment to open up this issue, right? When you experience, for instance, a couple of hundreds unfinished vehicles on the yards, it's always good to show the facts and to show also the data, to say why we have unfinished vehicles, what happened, when did we had this demand from customers, and how did we introduce it to our suppliers, and where there's a time delay, and what kind of responses has supplier give to us, and how did we deal with this information. I think if you show a real business case and show what was the impact, where the pain points are, what are the lessons learned, I think that's the moment where you could drive a, let's say, behavior to say, actually, you are right, we have some lessons learned. We had a lot of problem there, but what do we learn from that, right? So I think that's open up when people can see it, can feel it, can touch it, and can also know what success looks like. For instance, we were very happy we have some peers came to us and also introduced to us how success looks like when they successfully implemented a business planning processes. Then our team can really see that and then can imagine that if we do the same thing, we can be also very successful in the future. I think it's really about communicate why, but let the people feel that. So the improvement has to be tangible.
I like that a lot, because too often times what I'm seeing at the organization, they say, oh, I'm preparing for a big transformation and I want to improve forecast accuracy by X and reduce cost by Y and reduce inventory by, but if that's not sort of part of a greater story of how you ultimately drive tangible business value, then that's not really working out. So I like your approach here.
I also like to add, one is the big picture about the company, the business units, but also to talk about what's in it for the employees themselves, for the workforce who are touching all of these Excel files, who has to run numerous calls to suppliers to say, where are my missing parts, right? There, people will see, okay, there can be benefit. If I have a tool, I have a system, I can look at data real time. I don't need to write emails and walk back and forth. I don't have to call suppliers 3 times a day. I have my data at hand. And then there are going to be customers who also want to say, I have different options, right? What is the best for us to get my ordered vehicles? So with that data, you can have much more easier, let's say, process to come to decisions. Therefore, our workforce will see there's going to be a big shift of much more efficient working style than the current one.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And actually, we're already touching on a couple of components of the change management journey and the importance of communication. Can you share a little bit more on particularly change management? Because what we are seeing, large enterprises across geographies and industries, that remains a challenge. Not only related to planning, but in general, like how do you drive change in a big organization? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I think in general, transformation always starting with what problem you want to solve, right? If there's no problem, then you don't need to run a project, right? If you can identify clearly what are the problems you want to solve and make it also measurable, because I think measurable KPI is one thing that you should have really at the very beginning before you start a project. Have a proper, let's say, measure about baseline and know where your weakness areas are, and then identify what are my objectives from today, where I am, and then after the project, where do I want to achieve. Then, of course, design clear milestones, because I think a project like this is going to be really taking a lot of efforts, a lot of people are going to be involved. So I think if you say, this is a 3-year project, it's very hard for people sometimes to imagine what happens in 3 years. So I like to have milestones, which are smaller steps, but also be able to demonstrate their small successes. Again, I think also the success has to be tangible. So people have to feel that, have to touch that, to see, okay, it was now the delivery becomes shorter, delivery time becomes shorter, response time become quicker from suppliers, our customer satisfaction rate is increased, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's going to be, let's say, demonstration about smaller steps. And if you can reach those milestones and also have sometimes celebrations about those small milestones, and I think that's also take the people with you. And also clarify if there's any concerns to say, if we all automate, if we digitalize everything, does the current workforce still have job to do, right? My attitude is always like, we are going to upscaling people. I think many of our employees are willing to improve. It's just we as a company have to offer them this opportunity to make sure that they have the opportunity to learn, to improve, and also improve themselves by doing things, right? Become more strategic thinking. And I think this is quite welcomed at our group.
No, absolutely. And I like those are actually very tangible and good advices right there. Now, talking a little bit more about, obviously, you can only supply to your customers if you have a reliable supply base that can supply the thousands and thousands of components that go into the different vehicles that you produce. How important is the integration with your sort of tier N network? And how are you thinking about sort of connecting your upstream supply base with your own supply chain to sort of orchestrate the entire chain?
Right. I think there are a couple of aspects. One is, of course, the overall, let's say, capability of delivery. I've always found if you compare our peers in industry, it's not about the product itself. It's also about the capability of the supply chain, right? So that's the first thing, the material availability at right costs, which is, I think, the bread and butter we have every day. The second one, I think the supplier has to be early integrated into the overall, let's say, designing concept phase, because if you want to be ahead of innovation, we need a lot of intelligence from our supplier base. So early involvement, our procurement managers together with our suppliers into the product design phase, that's very important. It is also one improvement areas which we are driving. And the third one is we call that a design to value project we launched last year. It's really involving selected supplier to help us to think out of the box. Because if we want to keep designing the same thing, we will not be upfront in innovation. Therefore, we are also inviting innovative ideas from our supplier base to see what can we do co-design and also, of course, ready to do profit sharing in terms of continuous improvement, for instance. The fourth one, I think everybody talk about ecosystem sustainability. I think this one, we cannot do it by ourselves. We have to involve our large supplier base to work with us on all these ESG aspects.
Very interesting. Now, as a follow-up question to that, sometimes organizations ask like, but then, why would suppliers participate in a program like this, and what's in for them, and how do you get them on board? You've been obviously CPO in the past. I think last year, I saw you organized a big supplier conference. A lot of big suppliers came to Iveco, and I think you're seeing this as a very strategic part of the program, but maybe some advice on how do you get them motivated to participate?
Right. I think first one is really to be much more clearly communicate what we wish from them. Right. It start to communicate what is important for Iveco Group. For instance, last year when the supplier conferences, we highlighted what are the 3 areas most important for us. The first one is resiliency. So basically, really the whole non-disruptive supply chain. The second one is efficiency. Efficiency means the way we communicate. But also the efficiency means, how suppliers are going to work with us in different areas, right? And then third one is about sustainability. So the 3 keywords actually are now in the mind of our supply chain partners. And second one, we launched specific projects, like design to value, which I mentioned. Now the integrated business planning, which is very welcomed by our suppliers, which is big time missing. And third one, of course, we're looking at, improvement on sustainability, again, involving our key suppliers. Of course, you have to demonstrate what do you do different this time? Because innovation, everybody talk about supply engagement, everybody talks about. So what do you want to tell the suppliers you're going to do things different? I think they are going to observing us. One thing is what we say, and the second is what we do, right? One of the example we always say is now, for instance, design to value. This time we are going to have the lead is taken care by the platform managers, so they own the projects. And supply chain engineering manufacturing, we are the supporters to bring ideas into this different platform programs. So it's different than in the past. And supply chain has idea, please do this and please do that, and nobody cares, right? So we turn this time to have a clear ownership, who owns the projects, and what roles supply chain plays. And the second is about, you have dedicated resources. So you need to make sure that if innovative ideas comes or ESG program comes, then you have dedicated resources to follow up and give timely feedback. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Maybe 2 questions. The first one is, when you introduce your role, you obviously have the full broad spectrum of all the sort of parts of supply chain. You have prioritized this program, but there are other programs as well that you're running. How do you, from your point of view, ultimately prioritize out of all the things that you have on your plate? Sort of, why do you pursue certain projects and why do you not do others?
I think that's a very good question. So basically, I think all the chief supply chain officers might want to do 100 different things, right? Yeah. The major issue is really to prioritize. I did it 2 ways. One thing is to understand, as I said, supply chain need to make sure that the company is going to be successful. So understand what the business side, what is needed. The other side, I went to my teams, my employees, to understand what do they need. One of my practical tip I can give is when I do the onboarding, for instance, get to know my team. I always ask basically, first to understand who they are, what they like from their work, but also I like to ask what are the things they felt can be improved and how I can help them to improve their daily work, right? When they come in with a laptop, open up and then say, these are all the Excel files I'm working, trying to catch numbers from this Excel file, mapping with the 3 other Excel files. I know they want to tell me, we need better tools, right? I'm losing a lot of hours, try to write mails and looking for our data, which is stored somewhere, right? So if you understand what the business need and what the teams need, and then you can match this too. So also I'm not the person to like to run 50 projects in a year. I'm more run a handful of projects. I like to make sure that project gonna be successful. Then I finish this project and I move to the next, right? So I think have less KPIs but meaningful KPIs to measure success, but making sure the pain points are solved for business and for teams.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Now, last question. What makes you most excited about this big planning supplier collaboration program?
I hope we will have in the future no longer disruptions on supply chain. I think we're going to have, let's say, happy suppliers, but even more important, happy customers.
Mm-hmm. That I love. And I think there will always be disruptions, but it's all about, how can we respond to these in a timely manner and, then sort of propagate it through the supply chain to understand the impact. So, absolutely. So, Angela, thanks a lot for joining AIM 10X Digital. It's always, pleasure talking to you. I learn a lot. Thanks also for sharing your perspective on change management and prioritization, because a lot of times we dive into the details, but I think it's important to think through how do I prioritize what's important for my business, and then the moment I run a big program, how do I think about actually rallying the entire organization behind it? And I think that was extremely useful. So thanks for sharing the wisdom here today with us.
Thank you very much, Stefan. My pleasure.
Awesome.